cold-blooded bikers harass a young waitress. Her next move leaves them begging for mercy. In the small town of Millfield, a group of bikers known as the Reapers ruled the streets with an iron fist. Led by their ruthless president, Jax, they reveled in their reputation for bullying and intimidation. The townspeople lived in constant fear, never daring to stand up to the Reapers. One warm summer evening, a young waitress named Lily was working her shift at the Millfield Cafe. As she cleared tables and took orders, the roar of motorcycle engines filled the air. The Reapers had arrived. Jax swaggered into the cafe, his tattooed arms glistening with sweat. His crew followed close behind, their faces twisted into sneers. They took over a large booth in the corner, propping their boots up on the table. Lily approached cautiously, her heart pounding. "What can I get for you?" she stammered. Jax fixed her with a predatory gaze. Well, aren't you a pretty little thing?" He reached out and grabbed her wrist. "How about you sit on my lap and keep me company?" Lily tried to pull away, but Jax's grip was too strong. Tears welled up in her eyes as the other bikers laughed and jeered. Just then, the cafe door swung open and a woman strode inside. She was tall and muscular, with close-cropped silver hair and piercing blue eyes. The Reapers fell silent as she approached their table. "Let the girl go," the woman said, her voice low and commanding. "Now." Jax released Lily's wrist and stood up, squaring his shoulders. "And who the hell are you?" The woman met his gaze unflinchingly. "I'm Nora, Lily's aunt, and I won't stand by while you terrorize my family or this town any longer." Nora had grown up in Millfield and had witnessed the Reapers' cruelty firsthand. As a young woman, she had been powerless to stop them. But now, after years of training in martial arts and self-defense, she was ready to take a stand. Lily rushed over and hugged her aunt tightly, sobbing into her shoulder. Nora stroked her hair and murmured words of comfort. Then she turned back to face Jax and the Reapers. "I know you're kind," Nora said. "You think fear makes you strong, but real strength comes from courage, compassion, and community. It's time someone taught you that lesson." Jax sneered. "Big words from a lonely old woman. You really think you can take us on?" Nora smiled coldly. "I guess we'll find out. Meet me at Millfield Park tomorrow at noon. Let's settle this." As Nora and Lily left the cafe, whispers spread through the diner. Could this mysterious woman really stand up to the Reapers? Was change finally coming to Millfield? That night, Nora made some calls. She reached out to old friends, community leaders, and anyone who had been wronged by the Reapers over the years. Slowly but surely, a plan began to take shape. Meanwhile, Lily tossed and turned, gripped by nightmares of Jax and his cruel sneer. Her aunt was strong, but how could one woman hope to defeat an entire biker gang? Lily feared that Nora's bravery would only lead to more pain. At the Reapers' clubhouse on the outskirts of town, Jax seethed with rage. How dare this Nora humiliate him in front of his men? He would make her pay dearly. As the bikers sharpened their knives and polished their bikes, a storm brewed on the horizon. The next day dawned bright and hot, a blistering sun beating down on Millfield Park. By 11:30, a large crowd had gathered, curious townspeople, community leaders, and some surprising faces from Nora's past. Jax and the Reapers rolled up right on time, the rumble of their bikes echoing off the nearby buildings. They dismounted and strode across the grass, their studded boots tearing up dirt and grass. Nora stood to meet them, as calm and unruffled as a mountain lake. She was flanked by a dozen men and women, a cross-section of Millfield's bravest citizens. Many were old and gray, but their eyes burned with determination. "I see you brought backup," Jack scoffed, eyeing Nora's motley crew. "Didn't think you could handle us alone?" "I'm not alone," Nora replied. "I have the strength of this community behind me. For too long, we've let fear rule us. But not anymore. Your reign of terror ends today, Jax." With a roar of fury, Jax charged at Nora, his fists raised. But before he could land a blow, a sharp whistle pierced the air. Everyone turned to see the sheriff striding across the grass, his badge glinting in the sun. "That's enough," the sheriff said, his voice hard. "There won't be any brawling in my town. Jax, you and your crew are under arrest for countless crimes. We have witnesses and evidence going back years." Nora smiled grimly as deputies swarmed in to handcuff the stunned bikers. "You see, Jax, I wasn't planning to fight you. I was just the distraction." As the Reapers were led away, the crowd erupted in cheers and applause. Millfield was finally free from the biker gang's cruel grip. But Nora knew the real work was just beginning. It would take the whole town to begin healing from the scars of fear and violence. In the aftermath of the Reapers' downfall, Millfield slowly started to rebuild. Nora, using her connections from a previous career in construction, organized volunteer crews to repaint graffiti-covered walls and repair vandalized storefronts. The transformation was astonishing. The drab gray of neglect gave way to vibrant colors and blooming window boxes. Lily found herself at the center of these efforts, her natural optimism and kindness drawing people to her like moths to a flame. She helped organize a community garden, rallying schoolchildren and retirees alike to grow vegetables and flowers in a once-vacant lot. But not everyone was happy with the changes. Some of the Reapers' sympathizers, angry young men who had reveled in the bikers' chaos, began lashing out. They left dead rats on doorsteps, slashed car tires, and whispered threats in dark corners. Nora refused to back down, but worry gnawed at her. She couldn't be everywhere at once, and the town's newfound unity felt fragile. Late one night, as she painted over a crude message scrawled on the side of the cafe, a brick smashed the window behind her. Nora whirled around to see a masked figure sprinting away down the alley. Heart pounding, she gave chase, but the shadowy form vaulted a fence and vanished into the darkness. The next day, Nora called another town meeting. With the sheriff's support, they organized a neighborhood watch and a buddy system, ensuring no one would have to walk alone at night. Nora also began teaching self-defense classes, equipping Millfield citizens with the tools to protect themselves and each other. Slowly but surely, the tide began to turn. The sympathizers' attacks grew less frequent as the town's unity grew stronger. Lily's garden bloomed, a riot of color and life, a powerful symbol of Millfield's resilience. But then came a sweltering July day that would test the town's resolve like never before. As Lily dug in the garden, sweat dripping down her face, the roar of a motorcycle shattered the peace. A lone biker, his jacket emblazoned with the Reaper's insignia, came tearing down the street, a chain whirling over his head. Lily froze in shock as the biker barreled straight toward her garden, his eyes full of malice. But then a powerful hand seized her arm, yanking her to safety as the motorcycle plowed into the flower beds, crushing tender stems and petals. It was Nora, her face grim and her fists clenched. As the biker spun his bike around for another pass, Nora stepped forward to meet him. A hush fell over the street, broken only by the sound of the revving engine. What happened next would become legend in Millfield for years to come. As the rogue biker charged, Nora planted her feet and met the oncoming motorcycle with a fierce sidekick straight to the front wheel. Metal crumpled and the bike flipped end over end, catapulting the biker into the mangled remains of Lily's garden. For a moment, everything was still. Then the biker staggered to his feet, his face twisted with pain and rage. He drew a wicked knife from his boot and lunged at Nora. What followed was a blur of motion, a deadly dance of whirling steel and flying fists. The biker was far younger and stronger, but Nora's skill and speed were honed by years of training. She dodged and parried, landing precise blows to pressure points and joints. In the end, it was no contest. The biker's knife clattered to the ground as he sank to his knees, his arm twisted behind him in an iron grip. Nora zip-tied his wrists and handed him off to the waiting sheriff, her face impassive. As the biker was led away, a cheer went up from the watching crowd. Millfield citizens swarmed around Nora, clapping her on the back and shaking her hand. For the first time in years, they felt truly safe. But Nora was already kneeling beside Lily in the ruins of her garden, gently lifting a snapped sunflower stem. Lily's eyes were wet with tears, her hands trembling. "It's all ruined," Lily whispered. "All that work, all that beauty, Gone. Nora smiled softly and pressed the broken flower into Lily's palm. Nothing is ever truly gone, Lily. Life always finds a way to regrow, to heal. We'll replant this garden, stronger and more beautiful than before. And we'll do it together, as a community. In the weeks that followed, Nora's words proved true. Millfield citizens came together to rebuild the garden, donating seeds, tools, and countless hours of labor. Children painted rocks to border the beds, retirees crafted birdhouses and wind chimes, and everyone took turns watering and weeding. The garden became the heart of Millfield, a vibrant oasis of life and color. Families picnicked on the grass, teenagers sketched the flowers, and Lily held story time for the little ones in the shade of a blossoming cherry tree that had been planted in honor of the town's triumph. But even as Millfield flourished, Nora couldn't shake a sense of unease. Jax and many of the Reapers were still awaiting trial, and their threat hung over the town like a shadow. Late at night, Nora would jolt awake from dreams of revving engines and cruel laughter. She knew that the true test of Millfield's strength was yet to come. The bikers' day in court was fast approaching, and Nora had a sinking feeling that the Reapers wouldn't go down without a fight. She only hoped that the town's newfound unity would be enough to weather the coming storm. As the trial date loomed closer, Nora threw herself into preparations with a grim determination. She would do whatever it took to protect Millfield and the new life they had all built together, no matter the cost. The day of the trial dawned gray and rainy, as if the very sky was weeping for the pain Millfield had endured. Nora, Lily, and a busload of townspeople made the long journey to the courthouse in the city, their faces set with determination. The courtroom was packed, the air thick with tension. Jax and the Reapers slouched at the defense table, their expressions sullen. Nora and Lily sat directly behind the prosecutor, surrounded by their neighbors and friends. As the trial began, the prosecutor laid out a damning case. Witness after witness took the stand, recounting years of fear, violence, and intimidation at the hands of the Reapers. Nora's heart swelled with pride as she watched Millfield's citizens stand tall, their voices steady as they faced their tormentors. But the defense attorney was shrewd, poking holes in testimonies and painting the bikers as misunderstood outcasts. Jax took the stand last, his eyes cold and calculating. "We were just a bunch of guys looking for a place to belong," he said, his voice dripping with false sincerity. "Yes, we got a bit rowdy at times, but we never meant any real harm. The folks in Millfield just didn't understand our way of life." Nora's hands clenched into fists as Jax spun his web of lies. She wanted to leap to her feet, to shout the truth for all to hear. But she held her tongue, trusting in the strength of the evidence and the courage of her community. As the trial stretched on, the rain outside turned to a heavy downpour. During a recess, Nora stood at the courthouse window, watching the sheets of water obscure the view of the city. Suddenly, a hand touched her elbow. It was Lily, her eyes wide and worried. "Nora," she whispered urgently, "I overheard some of the Reapers' supporters in the bathroom. They said that if Jax doesn't walk free, they're gonna make Millfield pay. They said they have plans in place." Nora's blood ran cold. She knew all too well what the bikers were capable of. Visions of fire, destruction, and pain flashed through her mind. She pulled Lily close, her voice low and fierce. "Listen to me. No matter what happens here today, Millfield will survive. We're stronger than they know. Stronger than even we knew before all this began." Lily nodded, drawing strength from her aunt's resolve. Together, they returned to the courtroom, ready to face whatever verdict awaited them. The jury deliberated for 2 days. Millfield waited, a town holding its breath. On the evening of the second day, as the sun dipped below the horizon in a blaze of orange and red, the jury returned. Nora gripped Lily's hand as the verdict was read. The foreman's voice rang out clear and strong. "Guilty." The word echoed through the courtroom like a thunderclap. Jax and the Reapers were sentenced to years in prison, their power broken at last. As the bailiffs led them away, Jax turned to look at Nora, his eyes burning with hatred. "This isn't over," he hissed. "You'll pay for this. You and your whole damn town." But Nora just smiled, a small, triumphant smile. "No, Jax," she said softly. "It is over. Millfield's stronger than you ever were, and will be waiting if you ever try to come back." That night, as the townspeople returned home, the rain finally ceased. They gathered in the garden, beneath a clearing sky studded with stars. They ate and drank, laughed and cried, toasting to their victory and to the bright future that stretched out before them. Nora watched it all with a full heart, marveling at the transformation she had witnessed. Lily danced barefoot in the grass, her smile brighter than the moon. In that moment, Nora knew that no matter what challenges lay ahead, Millfield would meet them. Together. 1 year later, Millfield was almost unrecognizable from the fearful, fractured town it had once been. The shops on Main Street bustled with activity, their windows filled with colorful displays. The community center hosted classes, clubs, and events for all ages. And the garden had expanded, green tendrils spreading out to cover nearly a full city block. Nora sipped her coffee on the porch of the small house she now shared with Lily, watching the town come to life in the soft morning light. She still taught self-defense classes twice a week, but more and more, her role was shifting to that of a mentor, a wise woman who offered guidance and support to those in need. Lily bounded out the front door, her waitress uniform crisp and clean. She had been promoted to manager of the cafe, and under her leadership, it had become the heart of Millfield's social scene. "I'm off to open up," Lily called, kissing Nora on the cheek. "I'll see you at the ceremony later?" Nora nodded, her eyes crinkling in a smile. Wouldn't miss it for the world. That afternoon, what seemed like the entire town gathered in the garden for a special dedication. At the center of the green space, a magnificent bronze sculpture now stood, a powerful figure of a woman. One hand extended in welcome, the other raised in triumph. It had been commissioned by the town council to honor Nora, but she had insisted that it stand for all of Millfield's unsung heroes, the everyday folks whose small acts of courage and kindness had brought about such profound change. As Nora stood before the cheering crowd, she felt a lump rise in her throat. She thought of all the challenges they had faced, all the pain and fear they had overcome, and she thought of the community they had built together, a tapestry woven of 1,000 different threads, each one unique and precious. "This statue isn't about me," Nora said, her voice ringing out clear and strong. "It's about all of us. It's about the power we hold when we stand together, when we lift each other up. It's about the unshakable strength of a community united by hope and love." As the applause washed over her, Nora felt a small hand slip into her own. It was Lucy, a shy 6-year-old who lived down the street. Nora had been teaching her to read in the evenings, watching her confidence blossom like a flower in the sun. "I want to be brave like you when I grow up," Lucy whispered, her eyes wide and shining. Nora knelt down and gathered the girl into a hug. "You already are brave, sweet girl, braver than you know. And I can't wait to see all the amazing things you'll do." As the celebration continued into the warm summer night, Nora looked out over the sea of smiling faces, the twinkling lights strung up in the trees, the lush green life that had sprung from once barren ground. And she knew, with a certainty that rang down to her very bones, that Millfield's story was only just beginning. There would be other challenges, other storms to weather, but they would face them as they had learned to face everything, together, hand in hand and heart to heart. For in the end, it was love that had saved them. Love and the courage to stand up, to speak out, to fight for the community they held dear. As the first fireworks blossomed across the starry sky, Nora felt a sense of peace settle over her like a benediction. Millfield had been forever changed, not by grand gestures or sweeping reforms, but by the quiet power of compassion, the unshakable resilience of the human spirit. And as long as that spirit endured, as long as they had each other, Nora knew that no force on earth could ever break them. Millfield would continue to grow, to thrive, to reach for the light. And they would do it as they had done everything else together, now and always.